Good evening, good evening, good evening. I was about to skip for a minute.
Put on 5G.
No, it was messing up on
2G?
Yeah. Still acting strange. Oh well.
Doing that what, last week, a couple weeks ago?
Mm-hmm. All right. You
All right.
ready?
You ready?
I'm ready. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, I guess. Welcome to another episode, session, conversation, pain reality. Ain't the one. So while she step away, today we're going to talk about, well, for people who don't know, I'm Jew, and Tia just stepped away. She'll be back in a minute to introduce herself.
You really just stop talking?
Yeah, because you come back to introduce yourself.
You're supposed to stop talking now.
All right, my bad.
I'm his lovely wife, Tia.
And today, I've seen on Facebook, different places, a few conversations about church hurt. So today we're going to talk a little bit about examples or what that looks like, sounds like, stuff like that. And then we'll have a few discussion points that we'll also hit on just to kind of see, some of the roots of it and stuff like that, or thoughts on the roots of church hurt and different stuff like that. All right. So, Tia, you got anything else you want to add?
Nope, you did good. That was funny.
Yeah, because you funny. All right, so the first, not even question, but just the first thing. I personally have never experienced church hurt. I personally have not. So please understand, like, the conversation tonight when I'm talking. In some ways, obviously, is completely opinion based.
I mean, it is pain reality.
It is. However, my dear wife did say she experienced church hurt. So just tell us. I mean, you can go into much detail as you want, but what was it? What happened? If you don't mind telling us, like, give us your example.
So it's crazy because I share my story all the time, but there's so many different, I guess, pieces you could say that comes with that. So just to kind of overall view, I grew up with, my father was a pastor, but he was also very, very abusive, like crazy abusive type stuff. And when he first came home, because my parents were separated for a long time due to domestic violence. So when he first came home, this is before he was a pastor. We were in a church that I grew up in, and people in the church knew he was abusive. So you have that right there that already kind of began at a young age coloring my view of the church. To then when he became a pastor and we had our own church, people knew that my dad was beating us and no one still did anything. So for me, that kind of colored my opinion of the church. So fast forward to, I repeat the cycle in my first marriage, to somebody in the church. And then here again, when I went to like church leadership, looking for assistance, looking for something, it was kind of brushed away, like it wasn't like important, like the trauma that I was experiencing didn't mean anything because God frowns on divorce, or you shouldn't, it got to be, you got to pray and you got to be a submissive wife and you got to do all of these things. So I'm at this point now, I'm like, okay, what, that didn't make sense to me. And although I had my own like relationship with God, when you're constantly, it's put in your face that the people in the church, their heart is not what we I grew up for so long with people always talking about how good God was and how amazing God was and all of these things. And not to say that those aren't true things, because they are, but it took years for me to get an understanding that people will choose to do whatever it is that they want, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with God. Like, that's their choice. God gave everybody free will to do what it is that they want. But at the time, like growing up and then experiencing my own intimate trauma in my first marriage, it didn't help that all of this stuff was happening in the church, and I'm telling people in the church, and there was no assistance, nobody wanting to help. So I pieced out when it came to church, and I lived a very colorful life at that point because I was trying my hardest to get as far away from church as much as possible. Like, not, I don't even want to say I didn't believe in God or nothing like that, but it was like at that point I'm like, I'm closing my ears to anybody trying to tell me anything about God, anybody saying, hey, come to church, come do this, come do that, because in my mind it's like, what for? Like, is there a point of me going to church? Like, because when things happen, they're not here to help you, they ain't trying to help you get over. So I just had a bad taste in my mouth when it came to like church people.
Church people.
Yeah, it was just bad.
So, and I mean, I know you sent me the video. What is it called? What was the
church?
No, the whatever they do a podcast or whatever it's called, in the room or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and they were talking about that, how basically it was like their expectation of people was one thing, and then when that doesn't happen, that caused them to be depressed or caused them to look at the church like, well, what I need to go to the church for when they acting like that. But like you said, is outside of what your expectation of people is, but also what your expectation of what the God in people is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, and honestly, I think that's probably the biggest issue, is because I felt like the people I'm going to tell about this, even from a kid, I felt like they had the power to do something. Like, I literally felt like, okay, I'm not coming to you lying. Like, I ain't coming to you telling you that this stuff is happening to me just cause.
Right.
My thought process was, you about to help. You gonna save me. You gonna talk to him. You gonna do something. Like, we go to this church. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, this is happening. Like, can you help me? And I think, the reason why I walked away bitter is because I was made to look like I was the problem. Like, it's because you are doing something, the reason why you're being treated this way. Even as a kid, it was like, we can't say nothing about what goes on in y'all's house. That ain't our place. Right. It was kind of viewed like that. So, it just kind of gave me a bad taste, because I had been in church my whole life. And so I looked at the church, how I was taught, like the be all for every solution to everything that you're going through in life. And so for me to start getting an understanding that that's not true, for one, I equated that to how God acts.
Right.
And then I didn't want to have anything to do with the establishment of going to a church, because ain't none of y'all right in the church when y'all would allow people to be abused. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So when you because there's a lot of different examples of church hurt. Like, obviously your example, like, okay, y'all aren't doing anything to help. Y'all know what's going on. You're not doing anything to help. Multiple other offensive things that happen. You know what I mean? Like, people get offended about different stuff. Who speaks to them? Who don't speak to them?
Yeah.
The pastor don't call them back, or you know what I'm saying? Different stuff like that. So like, where do you think the majority of it like stems from? Like, what do you think is the foundation of you? You're speaking. You can speak from personal, and then just overall, like,
I mean, but I guess what I'm asking, are you talking about the person who walks away saying they've been church hurt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just in general, I guess.
I mean, I would say the biggest thing is offense, because perfect example, when I wrote my book, um, I really felt like the church that I grew up in would now finally accept that these things were true.
Mm.
And it didn't happen that way.
Mm.
So then I was offended at that point. Not, I won't necessarily say church hurt, but my offense grew against that particular establishment, if you will.
Mm.
And like my book didn't really have anything to do with the church per se on that level, but because now I've come out with this book, I've been an advocate for all these years, really out here getting in the field, doing the work, and you still doubting that my truth is my truth, that this thing happened to me. So, on top of, and that was when I will say around that time is when I was coming back, but that offense was a different type of blow for me, because now I feel like, okay, all this work I've done over all these years, and you're still looking at me like, I was the problem.
Right.
Like, first of all, you're the problem because you never should have told nobody this happened anyway. So it was just like offense on top of offense. And although at that time when that particular incident happened, I wasn't in a position to claim church hurt, the offense against the people of the church grew at that point. And so I think when we talk about church hurt, it ultimately is an offense. Like, I'm offended by
something that happened,
and not just an offense. You've hurt a part of me that I don't allow people to hurt, because you're the church,
right?
Like, as the church, you shouldn't be able to wound me that deeply. But the issue then becomes,
well, is it that they shouldn't be able to, or that you feel like your expectation is that they won't?
Yes.
Okay.
But wait, I felt some type of way when I pulled back from going. Had a bunch of personal stuff going on, and nobody Yep. So a lot of times when we put, I think when people have that church hurt is because we are putting the expectation on the people of the church. But at the same time, because these people are claiming to be the people of God,
right.
I'm speaking on God's behalf and all of this type of stuff, those wires get crossed. So my dad, like, for the longest time, I had a very hard time separating the things he did with God being totally separate from that.
Right.
Like, how do you separate that when, this is the man of God,
right?
You're the preacher, you're the person in a church, but you doing all this horrible stuff. And so it's like, God act like that? This is the God y'all want me to serve? And this is, so, it's different. And I guess I can say, learning later, relationship with God matters. Right. But that still didn't take away the hurt and that feeling that I got, because all of those things took place in the church.
Right.
So
leadership expectation, and that's why I said that, because the video that I listened to, like, it for the young ladies that were talking, it boiled down to like your expectation of the people in the church. But one of the points that they made was the church is full of a bunch of broken people. You know what I mean? So yeah, you might, like, people come in and have those expectations, and then when the people don't live up to those, or their response doesn't live up to what you expected, then that translates into church hurt. So then my next question was going to be, or next part of the discussion, like, what was the difference between, and I know when you wrote your book, you didn't go to the same church, but what was the difference on the impact of, because some of those, like you said, some of those feelings were brought back, where it's like, okay, now I put out this book, now y'all gotta believe me, pretty much. Like, I'm not gonna write a book of lies. So where did you change over that time, from when you were going to the church and they didn't believe you or didn't do anything, to I wrote this book and they still don't believe me? Now, I understand you were still offended, or doubly offended, but where had you changed as far as, like you said, with maybe relationship or your thoughts on, because is it possible to be church hurt when you don't go to that particular church anymore?
That's actually a pretty good question. I would actually probably I don't think it's possible. I think at that point it's this church hurt me. So although I may have not although I may have not experienced church hurt here, I did there. So in the case of my book coming out, I think my expectation of this group of people is what kind of took a couple more punches.
So okay, please hold that thought. So even though you left that church, understood how they responded or didn't respond, you still years later had an expectation of their responses now.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so when I didn't get that response that I was looking for, it was that hurt offense all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many questions of, why would you put this book out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you say this stuff about your dad? And I'm just thinking like who does that? Like,
mm-hmm.
who, you know? So I think the expectation of those people, that was a totally different thing that I had to deal with, because it's like, man, you know, you can say for years that this stuff is going on, people in your house seeing this stuff going on,
mm-hmm.
and still nobody doing anything. And so it's like, y'all the people at the church, y'all get
mm-hmm.
stuff popping in the church. You know, you telling people to go sit here or go sit there.
Right.
But then when you come see this horrible thing happening right in front of your face and you don't do nothing about it, and then years later, here it come with the book, and y'all still viewing it, I think my feelings was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, y'all really viewing me like I'm gonna just write a whole book of lies about my
right.
father. Like, so I think I was just, you know, my feelings was hurt that people still looked at it as like, this is not something that you should have wrote. Like,
right. So it was still a level of church hurt.
Yes, it was still a level of church without being in that church. It was still a level, and I don't know if, but when I think about it now, it's like, for me, it was like I was trying to prove something to them,
right,
you know. So, and I think that was kind of bubbled up in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to prove to y'all that this thing really did. Yeah, like, I'm trying to prove it, and your response still is trash.
Do you think that in your thought process of trying to prove to them, do you think that stemmed from the original church hurt? Like,
yes.
Look, before it's all said and done, I'm gonna do enough to where y'all are finally like, oh, we get it.
Yeah. But, you know, just through experience, though, just thinking about church hurt in general, I think half of the problem becomes, even at that time, my relationship with God, mm-hmm. when I wrote my book, is totally different than my understanding and relationship with God right now.
Right.
Like, it was still different. It was still different back then. So I think ultimately our relationship with God is what's going, and I don't say that to say that you can't go to a church and someone in the church hurts you.
Right.
And so when you think of it, it's all, I don't want to call it a play on words, but is there a such thing as church hurt, or can we just go and say somebody who claimed to be a church person hurt me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's a totally different terminology, because when we say church hurt, we leave the establishment of church.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I say somebody in the church hurt me, that can be a separation from that
right.
individual, versus with me, I totally and completely separated myself from the whole establishment
right.
of church for years before I didn't go back to church until 2007.
But see, and that's like, I agree that those are two different things. Like, to me, I think there is a such thing as church hurt. Only because when you go to church and the only church you know is, or the only God that you know is coming from the people in that church.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like you said, like, when your representation of God is these people that respond a certain kind of way, you know what I'm saying? Or they talk to you a certain kind of way. Or like Star said, they don't reach out when you have some stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And that's the only, like we always talk about, you know, be kind to people, or like watch how you talk to people and different stuff like that, or watch what you say, because the only God somebody might see is in you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think that's where church hurt comes from, where it's like you said, you leave the whole establishment because this pastor that was the I don't even know how to put it, but the representative for me of what God is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. When he falls short or she falls short, then I consider that church hurt, as opposed to, and I think that being able to separate someone in the church hurt me, and church hurt comes with, like you said, the relationship. Yeah. Like when you don't, or you're at a certain point in your relationship with God to where it is like, okay, my expectation of people is that you are not ever going to fall short when it comes to dealing with me, even though I know people aren't perfect. Mm-hmm. But if God sent you to talk to me or to deal with me or to be in my life, there is no way in the world you're going to give me bad advice. There's no way in the world you're going to ignore me when I don't feel well or I got stuff going on. There's no way in the world you're going to call me a liar when you know what's going on in my house. You know what I'm saying? So like you said, when you walk away from the church, that to me is what church hurt is. It's like, okay.
But even though I get that, can we then say that's a valid thing?
I think we can, because everybody's at different stages in their life and in their relationship. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Because it's tough to invalidate, I guess you would say, somebody's feelings or like where they're at in their walk. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody comes into this thing at a different place and space and a mind space. So like you say, somebody walking off the street and, okay, I just invited that homeless person to church. The only God they know is, hey, that was such a generous person. Right. And then it's like, man, okay, God's a generous God. But then you come and it's like, wait, it's more people being rude to me or not sitting next to me or not speaking to me than it is. Okay, yeah, it is one or two people, you know what I'm saying, said hello. And like the podcast thing you sent me, they said it. They were like, you know, just like God, like, you know, works through people and stuff like that, so does Satan. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it's okay to push and pull, even in the church, especially broken people. Like, okay, you broken, be rude to this person. Or
yeah, but you're even... I don't know. I guess maybe because I'm over the hump. Like I guess being over the hump of being in that space of church hurt, it's like, are you going to church for the people, or are you going so you can grow that relationship with God? Ain't that the purpose of going to church?
Yeah, but everybody doesn't have that understanding. Like you said, you're over that hump. You know what I'm saying? You're beyond that. Your understanding of relationship is different than someone coming in. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Your understanding of stuff is different. So your perspective is going to be that. So when that person when they get to that point, then they'll realize like, oh yeah, I'm not even coming for the people. So yeah, that was offensive or could be taken as offensive, but I'm cool because what's meant for me is meant for me. If you wasn't meant to be in my circle or on my boat, so be it.
Yeah. But you know, it's funny that we actually decided this was a conversation, because I was thinking about it the other day. What got me over my church hurt was the people in the church. Like when I started going to the Burning Bush, and anybody who knew me at the time that I first joined the Bush, I had some stuff, you know, and I wasn't happy with people. I didn't form relationships with the people in the church, because I at that point I did realize my issue is the people in church, not necessarily who God is.
Right.
My issue is these are some nasty people, and I don't want to be bothered. Going to the Burning Bush is what actually helped me reevaluate how I seen church people. Like to begin to understand that, you know, the place for hurt and broken people is the church. So hurt and broken people are going to do what hurt and broken people do. And even if that means, you know, attack you or attack this person or attack that person, because that's what hurt and broken people do.
Right.
You know, so But I had to get to a place of going back to church,
right,
to understand that not everybody in the church is that what I experienced. And then I start forming relationships with the church people,
right,
and it changed my opinion of what I consider my church hurt, or what I consider church people.
right.
Because I mean, I would be quick to say church people this or church people that.
A lot of people are.
You know, so
right.
But that's what got me over church hurt and dealing with church people, is actually forming relationships, because everybody starts out somewhere, like you were saying,
right.
But if you're truly pursuing that relationship with God, there's going to be growth in that relationship.
Right, right.
And so by the time I came to you as this hurt and broken individual with all this isms and schism stuff, because of church people, you were at a different space in your life to be able to pull me from the space that I was in when it came to church people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah. And that's one of the things, like, they said again on that video, was like, sometimes church hurt comes because we're in a place or in a church physically that we're not supposed to be in. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have different stops and stuff like that where you're at. Like, there's people with no church home who just visit different churches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, like, you end up church hurt because, well, this person, and not saying this is like, this, just using what she said as an example. Like Star said, the people don't reach out. You know what I mean? But you were visiting, you know what I'm saying? You were visiting that church. That wasn't the church where you were supposed to
land.
Yeah, where you were supposed to land. So understanding, some of it is understanding that, okay, with broken people in that church, this ain't the church for you, because this ain't the place that's going to reach out.
Right.
Like you said, going to the burning bush. Okay, the people in the church help open your eyes, help you, you know what I'm saying, mature in ways and stuff like that, because essentially that's where you were supposed to be, because that's exactly what you needed. You know what I mean? A space where, okay, I can be me. I can be me, and slowly but surely, like, layers are peeled back, and now I'm more comfortable, and then I form relationships, and now I'm in a space where, okay, I can tell my story and people believe me, or I can tell my story and it doesn't fall on deaf ears. You know what I'm saying? No, we can't go back in time and they can't do anything about it, but I have enough people in position to listen and to be like, I'm sorry that happened to you. And to be like, well, okay, how did you get over that? Or I got somebody dealing with that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, your story is needed in that space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So okay, so do you think that church hurt means you leave that church? Not your personal situation,
I know,
but just in
that's
general.
Like, I feel like that's kind of like a loaded question, because so the reason why I feel like it's a loaded question is because one, what you said, maybe this isn't the place you're supposed to be. Right. Is leaving really a big thing? But I also think that comes with, so I'm gonna try to remember how this person put this, and I thought was so profound. It was a young lady at this conference I went to, and she said, do you, how did she put it? Darn it, this would be so good if I can remember what it was. She basically said, somebody hurts you in a church, does that mean you leave your assignment? So I was like, whoa, like, that's actually good. Like, so with the question you're saying, it really, I think, is going to boil down to what your relationship is with God. Like, you know, can you be obedient enough when God has called you to stay in a place that's uncomfortable for you?
Right.
Like, are you in that space with God? Are you submitted enough to God to be obedient when something happened in this church that deeply wounded me, but God, you placed me here and you called me here. What now, God? Like, can I leave just because your people did this thing to me? Is my assignment over with now because your people were bad?
Man, you said to me.
Right.
The woman used it.
Yes. Or do, you know, how do you navigate that? I mean, that reminds me of people saying, God told me this.
Yeah.
But then when the circumstances of what you God said to you is different than you wavering on whether or not God said it to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like
wishy-washy.
Yeah, like God, you making God look bipolar.
Like as long as they bringing me good stuff and telling me good stuff, I know that's from God.
Yes,
they bring me the heavy stuff, and it's like
I don't know about that. Right? Yeah. So I mean, can you still stay in your assignment when you've been hurt?
And that's but that like you said, like it all boils down to your relationship with God, because when you and please when you claim church hurt, and I'm not saying, you know what I'm saying, people are, but like people are making it up, or, you know what I'm saying, they don't feel how they feel. But we already know, like, you make a choice to be offended.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and a lot of church hurt comes from offense, just offended. Somebody didn't call me back, or somebody didn't invite me somewhere, or I invited them and they didn't come, or, you know what I'm saying, that, oh, well, they got their circle and I'm not included, and or I want to be all these different things. So at the end of the day, it's like you said, like, if I'm offended, is it a deal breaker, so to speak? Is it, man, I'm leaving this church?
Yeah, but most of the time it's a deal breaker for people.
I know. Even if their assignment isn't finished. You know what I mean? Like, because like you said, I think a lot of people don't separate or can't separate in that time. Somebody in the church hurt me and church hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because so many people put their faith and you know, people will say they don't and stuff like that. But let's be real. Like, so many people put their faith in the people of the church, whether it's the pastor, whether it's any of the pastors, whether it's, you know, the council of all these different people. So when something does happen or they fall short, it ain't as easy to stay, because I gotta look at them every time I come here. You can't look at this person.
That's hard, man.
I mean, I understand that it can be hard, but like you said, that it requires such a level of maturity, spiritual maturity, to be like, you know what? Things didn't go the way I thought that I expected them to go. So let me go back to the drawing board, change up my expectations.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of your church hurt it falls down to your expectations too. So
and then you've known me for decades.
Yes, I have actually.
And what's one of the things I've always said, what a lot of times people gonna be people. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
I knew it. I know. Gave me a chance
my fault. Okay, rewind.
You want to start over?
Yeah, okay, rewind. So you've known me for decades.
I have actually.
Try to get this word for word.
No, go ahead.
No, you know what I mean? But like, I've always said that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think I remember one time, like, we was having a conversation and I said that to you, and you was just like, so you just don't expect
Yes,
and I'm just like, I just expect people to be people. You know what I'm saying? And I truly think that's one of the reasons that I've never felt like I've experienced church hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because, like, for me, I've always been able to compartmentalize people being people, and like, people are imperfect, and like everything's not. I've been hurt before, like you asked me earlier, and I've been hurt or had my feelings hurt, stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like I've never allowed it, I guess you could say, to like get me in a tailspin.
So when it comes to, I mean, I guess this is more general for you since you've never experienced church hurt. Never had to go through that period of like depression.
No. And that's what I was about to say. Like, I've never, like, because as much as I may have felt something for somebody and they've done something, you know what I'm saying, to where I'm just like, dang. All right. Like, for me, it's always what's done is done. You know what I mean? Like, even down to, like, you know, like, one of my best friends, like, just ran me down, and I'm just like,
no, he didn't.
All right, huh?
I said no, he didn't.
No, he didn't what?
You said one of your best friends ran you down. I said no, he didn't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What you mean, no, he didn't?
No, I'll just play. Go ahead.
He's crazy. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it hurt, but I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I'm just like,
Okay, so even with that thought process, then people hurt you, do you forgive them? Or are you holding grudges? Exactly. It's totally different. Totally different. I mean, because you got to think of it that way too.
But see, for me, like, I would say I would personally be like, I'm not holding grudges, but then I would be like, okay, what's your definition of a grudge? Like, do I reach out to this person and be like, what's up? No,
but I mean, I wouldn't do that either. But so for me, when I think of forgiveness, when I look at you, like, I'm not seeing all the wrong and all that stuff that you've done. Not saying that I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at you, or I'm having having dealings with you.
No, I don't. Yeah.
That's not the first thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah. No, I think I've been able to pretty much forgive people. Just I mean, we don't kick it.
I mean, I don't think once you forgive somebody, that means, oh, now you part of my circle again. Right. I definitely don't think that. Right. But like, I remember one time I was talking on a panel and someone asked me, how do you know that you really truly forgave that? What you doing?
Trying to get the manners out to see what the question is.
Oh. Somebody had asked me, how do you know you've truly forgiven somebody? Yeah. And I was like, when I could truly pray for that person and want God's best for that person, like I honestly knew I had forgiven that person. Like, there was not that pinch in my face. I ain't stalking your Facebook page so I can say, ugh, because you posted something. Right. And we ain't even friends. Right. But that's when I knew I had truly forgiven someone. And so for me, because I dealt with anger and because I dealt with hatred and unforgiveness, so when God delivered me from that, and I'm talking young age, delivered me from some of that stuff, it's hard for me to hold a grudge again. Even you have done me wrong, dogged me. And I'm not saying I can't feel hurt, but I'm not holding it against you that you did me that way. Right. Like, I continue on. It's not like I forgot, but literally, if you come to me and you need my help to do something, 9 times out of 10, I'm still going to help you. I'm still going to try to get you where you need to be, even though just the other day you dogged my life on purpose. Right. So, but I think, with forgiveness, when people think church hurt, they bottle up all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, that was at church not that long ago where, we were talking about bitterness and, and unforgiveness. Right. And, so I think a lot of times, that root of unforgiveness and bitterness sets in when you talk about church hurt and, all of those type of things. And so then it's even harder to come back. Because when we think of unforgiveness, we've taken the whole idea of the body of church, and I don't forgive y'all because this one person that went to a church did me this way. Right. But I don't forget a whole body of church now, and now I'm bitter because I ain't never going back to nobody's church. Right. So that's how I was. Literally, I was out of church for years, and I grew up in church. I was out of church for years because I felt that way. Like, no, I'll never go to another church. Right. There's no parts of me that want to have anything to do with
because
church.
I don't want to speak for you, but because those people represented the church.
Yes,
they what I mean? Like
the church.
And that's like when we always talk at church and you be like, we're part of the body. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not the church, we're part of the church. Like, that's the thing. People allow people to be the church for them. You know what I mean? And so it's like you said, it's hard to go back to church when the only church or the only God I done seen is how rude these folks are. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's very, like we always say, it's a very slippery slope. So you talked a little bit about forgiveness and stuff like that. Like, how important do you think that is when it comes to that church hurt?
So, I think when you really start pursuing that relationship with God, like, that was one thing, like, when I decided I was going to be on being an advocate and I want to help women, a lot of the women that I deal with, when we in our sessions, they deal with a lot of unforgiveness and bitterness. I was talking to somebody one day, and so on my Instagram business page, I was just scrolling through this one day, and a lot of a lot of the little picture posts and stuff speaks from the heart of bitterness. Like certain comments that's made, just it's like the way we are going to keep thriving is by speaking through the bitterness of what whoever this person is. And I said it's so crazy that you keep speaking from a heart of bitterness and unforgiveness because this person did this thing to you, and then the next question I'm asked is, why do I continue to go back to the same thing? Because you keep literally picking up the same thing every single day. Like if I'm cloaking myself in unforgiveness, that's a choice. Like we're literally picking up unforgiveness every single day. I told somebody, I said, I love coffee. Every single day I have this morning time ritual where I get up, come downstairs, I'm praying, I'm in my word, listening to my music, and it always ends typically with a cup of coffee. Like this is my routine. This is my choice to every single day go get this coffee that I think is amazing. I make good coffee. And so I truly think, okay, let me have my coffee today. What's the difference though than me waking up every single day? The first thing I do is I run to Facebook so I can look at this person's page that I don't like, that hurt me, I ain't forgave you. And I've drank that unforgiveness for today. So you literally are cloaking yourself every single day by choosing to pick up the offense, choosing to pick up all of these are choices.
Right.
I mean, you had a conversation of, I'm not in love all the time. That loving someone is a choice that we make every single day. Like that's choices that we make. God gave us choices. So when it comes to unforgiveness, it's simply about a choice. Like you are choosing to pick up unforgiveness every single day because you don't like this person or they deeply hurt you. I don't say that to take away from your hurt, but you're choosing every single day to not forgive someone. That's a choice. Like you consciously make the choice. Look, not today. Nope, not today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it has to come a point where your relationship and my internals, like when I work with kids, I tell them all the time, the more trash that you stuff on the inside, eventually you can't hold it in. And that's all the trash that's going to start spewing back out and coming back out. So in order to get rid of that, you got to release it. Like I don't choose to pick this up today. And even if you got to tell yourself that every single day, I don't choose to pick up this offense. I don't choose to pick up the unforgiveness that I had for this person. People ask me all the time, well, how can you forgive? You make the choice. You face it till you make it. I had to do that many a times. Like I literally had to do that many a times. And when I felt in my heart that this thing was really trying to take a hold of me, I laid on my face and I prayed. Like, God, you got to help me. Because if I can't forget him, you definitely ain't forgiving me. And I think that's the piece that people always forget. Like, I'm justified to feel this way. And because I'm justified to feel this way, God has justified why I feel this way. So you remember Pastor always says, we act like God is how we are.
Right.
I don't like you, so God don't either. And he's going to get you for doing this to me.
Right.
So that's not how it works. Like, he clearly says, you got to forgive, or he ain't forgiving you. So, and we don't remember that because in the midst of being in our feelings, I'm justified for feeling this way.
And I think like what you said, like is spot on, where it's like a choice. And I think as much as we say like it's not easy, it's not, but sometimes it is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
because how easy is it not to go to that Facebook page?
Right. You see them? Yeah. So like the decisions we make in not forgiving, like going to the Facebook page, posting different memes or like subliminal messages. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's easy to not do that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like that different stuff where like if that person reaches out and say hi or something, how easy is it to go off on them?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. So it would be just as easy to just say hi. You know what I mean? And
or just ignore it in general.
Right.
I'm not opening up that window again.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So like I would never say it's easy because it depends on the person, the situation, what you've been through, your mindset and stuff like that. But I do think that like God saying like, if you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven is basically letting you know, like, it is a choice. It should be a lot easier than it really is.
He literally says, think on these things.
Yeah.
So that means that it's a choice to decide what you're going to think on from day to day. I'm gonna think on good things or I'm gonna think on the bad things. And today I decided I'm gonna think on the bad things, and now I'm reinforcing the fact that I can't forgive you or that I'm still hurt. Like, yes, for a long time I had to deal with the hurt that my dad put me through. But at what point do you make the decision like I'm no longer going to allow this to define me?
I don't, and that's the thing. Like that's why when I've always been like, people are going to be people. That's kind of like, and not even a spiritual way, because back then I wasn't anywhere on the path. But it, you know what I'm saying? In a sense, that's what it was like. I don't got the energy.
Yes,
to energy. Yeah, you know what I mean? All right, you did okay. Yeah, that's jacked up. That sucks. But at the same time, I ain't got the energy to and it's not a knock against anybody who, falls into depression and stuff like that. But I'm like, for me personally, I've always been, I don't have the energy to allow you to have me, you know what I'm saying, to push me into depression or, push me into drug use, push me into being somebody I'm not.
Yeah. But and the crazy part is a lot of our offense happens in our, now I don't want to just say childhood, but in a lot of our immature years.
Right.
You know, so I can be 30, but maybe immature in the ways of,
Right. And that's what I was saying earlier, like where people are when they talk about church hurt or coming to church, like looking at how the people treat them or looking at this ain't God, and not understanding like everybody ain't gonna act like God.
Mm-hmm. So Star said, I think I have a hard time when the other person doesn't own up to what they did. One phrase I always use with people when I'm doing counseling is I always ask them, because this is something I had to deal with. Mm-hmm. Perfect example. My dad was an abuser. He abused us really any chance he could get. And I remember right before my dad died, he called and he said, if I've ever done anything to hurt you, I need you to forgive me. So it wasn't him saying, I did something to you. I know I've hurt you. I've not been good in this area or that area. It's like, well, if you think so.
Right.
And so I had to finally realize that he know what he did.
Right.
He knows what he did, but the narcissism in him, I'm not going to admit it. And if I can get you to believe that it might be an if in there, we good. But so I always ask people, if you never get the apology, if you never get the acknowledgement of what someone did to you, can you still live life?
Right.
Can you still be okay?
Right.
Can you still flourish? Can you still thrive? Can you still be who God called you to be, even if that person never owns up to it?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's very, very true. I feel some kind of way because you did this thing to me. You've never owned up to doing this thing, and I'm the one struggling.
Mm-hmm.
You're not struggling. You could care less at this point, but I'm still struggling. I'm struggling because I have a problem that you couldn't own up to, the fact that you used to beat me or you spit in my face.
You're being held prisoner.
Yeah, I'm being held prisoner because you did those things, but I'm the one can't let it go, because regardless of whether or not they've ever apologized to me or acknowledged it,
it's all about, to me, it's all about choices. You know what I mean? Like you said, and like Star said, like you have an issue and you don't think people can own up to it. And that leads me to like our last talking point is like, we've heard hurt people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like we talked about earlier, when you're dealing with people in the church or even in your life and people are broken, it's sometimes hard for people to admit they're broken. You know what I mean? And like a lot of the stuff that happens or comes out and that people do is because they're broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But if I can't admit or I don't know that I'm broken in certain areas or certain situations, and something comes out as a result of that brokenness,
all the trash in eventually.
Like it may not be that, I don't want to own up to it. It may be like, I may really just be like,
I'm good.
Yeah, like unaware, like, no. That and then when it may come out, sometimes it may come out in a, if I've ever done anything to you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like you said,
in my case, I mean,
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I know I've done something.
Yeah.
But in my brokenness and my mental state or wherever I'm at, whatever it is, isn't allowing me at this point to put it into words and say, I'm sorry that I did this and this and this to you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you watch movies and they're like, that ain't no apology. And that person is like, well, that's about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
Like, that's real life in some ways. You know what I mean? As much as it sucks, like you said, but taking that in that maturity level and being able to say, this person know they did something to.
I mean, literally for years, I fixated on the fact that he said if. Mm-hmm. Like, literally, it's in my book. Mm-hmm. Like, I fixated on that. But
what did that do to you?
I was mad. Like, you know what you did to me.
What I'm saying? Yeah. And like you said, he's like, he's at peace.
Right. Because he's
like, I apologized. Like, in the way that I know how to apologize, I apologize.
Yeah, that actually was what actually helped me really begin to forgive my dad. Mm-hmm. Is I was praying this one day, and although I didn't hold grudges, like the older I got, you start realizing when you're dealing with some unforgiveness, or you still got some wounding, that ain't truly been healed, and so I don't know what my dad went through as a kid.
Right.
I've heard different stories and different things like that. But one thing that really, really helped me is I asked God, let me see you how you see him. Mm-hmm. Because if you can look at this person who's done all of these horrible things to people, to me, your daughter, he's done all of these bad things, but you can look at him, and if he's come to you and admitted his wrong and asked you for forgiveness, and you can forgive him and totally don't remember it, I have to have that expectation if I'm going to be able to totally forgive all of the things he's done to me, the things he said about me, the lies he's told. And so God began to show me him as a broken person. Like, I love him. I don't care what he did to you. I still love him just as much as I love you.
Right.
So to really look at people how God sees people allows you to be able to think like, I'm just as broken in areas, and guess what? God still loves me. Yeah, they did me wrong, but imagine all the wrong that I've done and God still loves me, and he still cares for me. Who am I to then be like, oh, based off of how I feel? I'm never going to forgive you, and God isn't either, because now you're basically telling God that you feel exactly how I feel. And so I had to switch the way I thought about that, because I didn't want to continue walking in unforgiveness. Just even recently, we've really been on that at church, and just little areas I've identified when it comes to certain stuff that happened in my childhood. And no, not saying that I'm really walking around in a deep bitterness type of thing, but certain things that you think you're over, that you think you've dealt with, it begins to bubble up, and you be thinking like, man, I do that because of my childhood, or because that happened to me, or that happened to me. And then that's another area that needs to be healed. And so for me, lately, God, and I've always told God, I need everything to come up. Like, how can I be effective if, even stuff that I thought I've gotten over still affects me? I'm not being very effective if, God, you got me sitting in rooms dealing with broken women, dealing with broken women who's been in domestic violence situations or who've been sexually assaulted, but I'm still dealing with wounds from my past that I haven't allowed you to deal with because I've stuffed, whatever the case may be. So, I just began to ask God to just allow me to see this person how you see this person.
And that like, just from the stuff that you're saying, like, for me, just sitting here having this conversation, I personally would tell anyone, like, when we're talking about church hurt, or we're talking about how other people show us God, I would say, and not a way to avoid that, or because that's not necessarily what's going to happen, but make sure you're right. You know what I'm saying? Like, regardless of what they're showing, make sure that you're showing them God through you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that in itself will cut out a lot of the church hurt, because it would be like, you know what? My only expectation is of what I'm about to show you. You see what I'm saying? Like, I put the onus on yourself to be like, you know what? And if you're not at that stage in your relationship with God where you fully understand what that means, that's perfectly all right. But just understand that everybody, just because they go to church, doesn't mean that they're going to exhibit the characteristics of who God is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so understand that, and don't allow the fact that a person in the church hurts you. Don't allow that to push you away from the church, push you away from God. Mm-hmm. Understand that every single person that you encounter is an individual, and people are going to be people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, just listening to you talk about your church hurt and stuff like that for me is another people will be people type of thought process, where it's like, look, I'm going to worry about me. And if I worry about me and how I exhibit the characteristics of God with my love and different things like that, guess what? It doesn't matter what you exhibit, because one, I'll be able to discern it and look like, okay, hey, they coming out of left field.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to choose to be offended, because yeah, ain't you talking. It's cool. I ain't nothing but the devil. No.
Yeah,
but you understand what I'm saying? Where it's like, okay, if I worry about me, then I can separate, okay, who got my best interest at heart? Who's really coming to me with a word that God gave them, or who's coming at me sideways just cause, or whatever the case.
Just to get you to that point.
Yeah, just to get you to that point, to be able to have something to say.
Yeah. I the one thing that actually truly to end it all, that truly helped me, is when I began to pursue God.
Mm-hmm.
I started pursuing God because I truly felt like life had to be different than all the stuff that I dealt with, all those feelings, all that stuff. I felt like it had to be different. So I began to pursue God. Like I truly began to pursue God. And I always ask God, show me me. Show me the areas that I don't even think is a part of who I am. Like, show me those things that may offend people. I always say, like, you know, I'll never take I know when I have done something, and I definitely know when I haven't, but I still will never take how you feel about a situation away from you. Though that totally belongs to you. But that also means I have to realize that if you insist that I've offended you or did anything like that, that's what you have to deal with. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to pursue God so I can be right with God. And now I'm leaving that with you. And you literally have to think of it like that. Like, and so when I began to pursue God, I had to see it that way too. Like, God, if I want more of you, if I really want you to be magnified in my life, to be glorified in my life, I got to leave all of those things alone. Like, I can't continue to drink my coffee every single day. And, you know, and then this day I choose something different. And I can't continue to do those
picking
things.
Up that same thing.
Yeah, I can't do that every single day. So if I can encourage anybody, you know, is really start pursuing God, like with everything within you. The more and more and more you pursue God, you literally stop thinking about those things. And I'm not saying there won't be those times where you really got to deal with specifics, because it will happen. But your pursuit of God, you literally stop thinking about all the things that everybody has done to me. My pursuit of God becomes more important. Like, God, I need you more than I need all the offenses of the world. And then when you think about it, all the things that people have done to me, Jesus literally paid the best price of it all. He literally died for us. Like, so he if anybody I can be offended for the rest of his spiritual life. When it comes to people did him so dirty. Like, they did him horrible. And I experienced half of what he did. So, you know, it's just perspective, really. Like, you really got to change your perspective when it comes to stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, we've been in a position where we hurt people. We've literally been in a position.
Everybody has.
Everybody has.
We can pretend, but everybody has. You may not admit it. You may not think so. But everybody has. And everything that you said and we talked about tonight, I think boils down to, like you said, relationship. If you're seeking that relationship with God, then no offense, but people don't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
at the end of the day.
Yeah, at the end of the day. So you're a lot less likely to claim church hurt, because you're gonna understand people gonna be people. And my God is my God. The characteristics he has, ain't gonna waver, ain't gonna change. Like
right.
this is my guy.
Same today, every day.
Yeah, this is my guy.
And then really think about it. Yep, I know it's 10 o'clock. And then really just think about it. Does your assignment end just because this person hurt you?
Right. Right. That's why a relationship is so important.
Right.
Because you're not here for yourself.
Yeah.
Like we always talk about that, and they talk about that on that video. You got so much in you for other people that it's like, can you afford to stunt your assignment, to stall your assignment, to leave your assignment because such and such didn't come to your barbecue, because such and such didn't call me back? You know what I mean? Like, you really have to be in a position to hear from God to know, like, is it time to leave this church? Is this even the church I'm supposed to be at?
Right, in the first place.
Yeah, I'm look.
Because if you out of position, maybe you wouldn't have got hurt.
Right. Every time I turn around, I'm getting offended.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be here?
Right.
Maybe you are, and maybe you're choosing to be offended. Maybe that's
growth. Maybe, maybe God got you in that position for growth. So.
Right. But that's all I got. Tia Payne, as usual, great conversation. Thank you for sharing your experience, your growth, your maturity of church hurt, and how you work through that, stuff like that. Your wisdom on offense and all that good stuff. Keep drinking your coffee every morning. Thanks for tuning in. Whoever did, thanks for the comments and stuff like that. We'll be back next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.
Y'all be blessed. Pursue God with everything that's in you. Ultimately, that's the goal. That's the goal, is the pursuit of God. So be blessed. Be blessed. And we'll see y'all next week.